educating young voters. It should come as no surprise to you that League is out to find and register as many eligible voters as possible. An important part of that effort is our voter service volunteers going into Denver high schools to register students so that when they turn 18, pardon me, they are ready to participate in the first election after that birthday. Tonight, however, we invite you to view and participate in a new program launched this year called Educating Young Voters, which covers why it is important to vote, who can vote, and how to vote. In conjunction with this nonpartisan civic education piece, the voter service volunteers provide a mock election experience in the classrooms of Denver's public and private high schools. At this time, when misinformation is rampant about voting rights and the security of elections, League's overall goals are to educate and prepare factually informed, confident, and determined voters to participate in this core duty of citizens of our democracy. Before I introduce tonight's speakers, I'd like to announce that next month's briefing on Tuesday, March 17th at 5:30 in person at the Montview Presbyterian Church. This March briefing will address the alarming rise in the incidence and lethality of domestic violence in Colorado and what resources are available to survivors of family violence. Because this March program is our first one in person for some months, please plan to arrive about 5 o'clock at the church so that we can share snacks, catch up with each other, and meet new people who are coming to our program. All of our educational events are open to the public at no charge. Lisa Haddix, the Denver League's co-chair of voter service, will now introduce you to tonight's speakers. We will be recording this event, and that video will be available on our website at lwvdenver.org in a few days. During the presentation, your audio will be muted. We will have a Q&A after the speakers finish. Please put your questions in the chat, which will be monitored by Pearl Anzalani, our Director of Communications, who will also facilitate the Q&A. And if there's time, we will also take spoken questions from you as well. Again, thank you for coming tonight. Lisa.
Lisa, I'm going to mute everyone and you're going to have to come unmute, okay?
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Sue, and thank you everyone for coming. As Sue said, I co-chair voter service along with Mariam Boricius, and our committee, the Voter Service Committee, focuses on voter registration and voter education. Tonight, we're sharing a program with you that we're rolling out to high schools. Sam Robinson is a Voter Service Committee member who's leading the effort. He's a circulator and he's retired from Microsoft, and he's been working with us for several years. We have two youth council members who I will also introduce, who will be part of making the presentation. Our youth council started in 2024. So let's go over the agenda. Next slide. I will cover what is this program about, and then our two youth ambassadors, our youth council members, Jackson and Skylar, will cover Your Voice, Your Power, which includes why vote, who can vote, and how to vote. Jackson's a junior at Mullen High School. He's on student council and does many other things, and he presented this program last fall to about 200 of his peers, his classmates. And Skylar Gold, she's a senior at Thomas Jefferson High School, and she's president of her speech and debate club. And as Jackson does, she participates in many other things at the school. And then Sam will do the overview of the mock election. And then Sam and I will cover how you can help as the audience. And that's when we'd love to get your feedback, comments, and questions that you have. Next slide. So what is this program? we like to use the acronym EYV because we took this program from a broader program that's called Energizing Young Voters. And Energizing Young Voters was started by a league member, Pat Suppley. She's with the New Jersey League of Women Voters. And their vision is that every 18 to 29-year-old will become a lifelong voter and an engaged citizen. They aligned the curriculum of this program, their program, Energizing Young Voters, with the New Jersey Department of Education core standards. And that program includes 4 modules, and it's a total of 8 hours. And the New Jersey League also has a scholarship program for seniors continuing their education. Several League of Women Voters groups across the country have taken this program on, including Boulder. And tonight I'm pleased that Piri Jensen from League of Women Voters of Boulder is here. She took the program, the 8-hour program, and condensed it into a program that takes about 45 minutes. And that was based on some feedback she got from contacts within the education system in the Boulder area. Then Sam Robinson with our league revised the program, and he got some additional input from civics teachers in Denver and decided to rename the program Educating Young Voters. So we still have that same acronym EYV. We've chosen Educating Young Voters for two reasons. One, to distinguish it from the broader program, the energizing program, and also to really emphasize that term educate instead of energize. So last fall, the program was presented at Thomas Jefferson High School, where Skylar goes, and Mullen, where Jackson goes to school. And we also presented out at the Denver Indian Center. A few weeks ago, Sam presented this program to 2 civics classes at Emily Griffith High School. And so this is the program that we're sharing with you tonight. And when we say program, that includes a slideshow with speaker notes and a mock election ballot. And it's designed so that it can be presented by students or by teachers or professors or by league volunteers. So our goal is to merge our voter registration efforts, which we've been doing for a while with education. And if the world was perfect at each high school in the Denver area, we would have a civics or history teacher who is a sponsor and then nominates some youth ambassadors for our youth council. And then the youth would really be the driving force and responsible for presenting the program and helping us organize registration. We're getting there, right? We're starting out, but that's our goal. So in the springtime, we present the education program where schools would like us to, and then we really focus on senior checkout for our voter registration. And then in the fall, we do both the education and the registration. And you might have heard that there's low turnout among younger voters, and that's true among eligible voters. But when young people are registered, they vote at a very high turnout. It's very impressive. This evening's presentation will be a little bit different than what we do in the classroom. We realize that the audience tonight is more of an informed audience. So some of the slides will more briefly review versus a more in-depth with some of the that we do in the classroom. And one other thing about the classroom presentation, there's a option to use a Kahoot. For those of you who don't know what a Kahoot is, you capture a QR code on your phone and then you're able to answer questions like multiple choice questions via the Kahoot. We're not going to do that tonight, but you'll know which slides are the Kahoot slides when we do use that interactive feature because they have a purple background. Last but not least, if you could hold your questions to the end. I realize Pearl Ann has muted you, so it would be hard to ask them anyhow. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jackson and Skylar.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jackson. Like Lisa said, I am a junior at Mullen High School. I've been involved with the League of Women Voters Youth Council since, I want to say, October. I had the opportunity to give this presentation to 200 of my classmates, juniors taking AP and honors government. It was a very successful, very informative, and I'm excited to get to share that with you all tonight. We'll go to the next slide. So I typically like to start off the presentation by providing a little bit of context about the organization giving the presentation, that organization being this Denver League of Women Voters. I really hone in on the fact that it is a strictly nonpartisan group. The main purpose of this is to really empower voters and protect the right to vote. And in the past, that was through women's suffrage and expansion of that right to vote. But today it's all sorts of issues having to deal with voting. And the historical component, I think is relevant, is relevant so that people understand the trustworthiness of this organization when it comes to voting. So we'll start off with the question, does voting matter? And it's almost a funny question because to many of you who have been voting for decades at this time, the answer seems like an automatic yes. But interestingly, among young voters, many people don't believe that their vote matters. So we like to start off with a question, which age group has the highest national voter turnout? You'll see there's 4 options here. Option 1, ages 18 through 29, 30 through 44, 45 through 59, or 60 plus. And I'm guessing you can assume the answer is 60 plus. And there's a variety of different reasons for that. Amongst young voters, the turnout is as low as 14% among eligible voters, only translating to an estimated 21.5 million votes. Many young people don't like the candidates and they don't trust the voting system. Many aren't accurately informed, right, of the choices that they have. Access to voting is a major issue, especially among largely disenfranchised communities. So there's a ton of different, issues at stake when it comes to this lower turnout amongst young voters. Whereas in older demographics, they're typically more active because they've been more involved in society. They feel that the issues and the candidates they are voting on pertain more to their lifestyle. So the first point that I want to make when giving this presentation to whatever audience we're presenting to is that the higher the voter turnout, the stronger a group's voices. And I make this point to emphasize that when young people show up to vote, young people have their voice heard. In the local last election, if you can think back to 2025, one of the major issues was, I think, on flavored tobacco, whether or not the ban was going to continue. And it was on the mock election ballot, I think, if Sam wants to confirm or not on that. But this, inclusion of it on the ballot shows that when people show up to vote, they are able to have their will reflected in the laws that are passed and the changes that are made. And so we really like to encourage students that when you show up to vote as a citizen, you are effectively shaping the society you live in. We'll pivot next to another Kahoot question, which is which ethnicity had the highest national voter turnout in the 2020 presidential election? Non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic black, non-Hispanic Asian, and Hispanic. Give you a couple seconds to think about that. So the answer was non-Hispanic whites. And the reason for this are, varying. Access to voting can be attributed to that. Belief in the process, trusting that your vote ultimately does matter in the end. Faith is quintessential. Which is why what really drew me to this program at first. It's all about instilling that faith in students early on that, yes, voting does matter, that you are making a difference. And among all students, especially, but especially among minority voters who have a tendency to not turn out as heavily. You can see also on this graph that you can see a decline in the belief that voting is the most effective way to bring about change, which just shows all the more importance for being vigilant with high school seniors as they begin to vote, to encourage them to trust in the process and encouraging them to engage in this civic duty. So we'll now go to a question of who has the right to vote. And we do this to kind of talk about eligibility, make sure that students are aware of the requirements for voting. And we get a little bit into the history as well, so that they can appreciate the process. Another Kahoot question here. When was the first U.S. election held? 1776, 1788, 1870, and 1920. That seems pretty late. The answer for that, as I'm sure you can guess, you history buffs, is 1788. And in this first election, it was only white males who owned property that were eligible to vote. This first election after the Constitution, started the process, started a long timeline getting us to where we are today. So if we can see that next slide, Mr. Sam. There it is. First U.S. election. Its requirements are male, white, over 21, and landowners. Then we go to another question, and a lot of people actually get this wrong. Who has the authority to decide who votes? Oh, there we go. The Federal Election Commission, state governments, and the president. And the answer to that question actually is state governments. The Constitution allows states the ability to set voter requirements, which a lot of people in my classes at least didn't tend to get. So on that next slide, as you might have seen, there's a lot of key landmark amendments addressing voting. You see in the 13th Amendment, we abolished slavery in 1865, and we grant those freed slaves citizenship with the 14th Amendment in 1868. Granting all U.S. citizens the rights enshrined in the Constitution. The 15th Amendment dealt with suffrage, ensuring that all African-American males were given the right to vote. And then the 19th Amendment in 1920 allowed or extended that freedom to women. So more with the timeline showcasing the progression of the right to vote over time and how it has slowly but surely expanded to a larger electorate. We'll go to another question here. When did Native Americans gain the right to vote? 1920, 1924, 1962, and 1965. The answer is technically 1924. However, as recently as 1962, Utah became the last state to remove restrictions with an under guardianship clause. So it kind of just shows the recency of, different minority groups getting this right to vote. Obviously, you have Voting Rights Act making it more accessible in 1965, but Native Americans weren't fully able to vote without restrictions until 1962. So you can see the continuation of that timeline as we progress closer and closer to the modern day. That Voting Rights Act in 1965 suspending literacy tests and making sure that voting rights are now federally enforced. Now, I typically spend a little bit of time on this slide when talking to students because it's the most relevant to them. It's what event led to the passing of the 26th Amendment to lowering the voting age to 18 years old, the draft, the Vietnam War, student protests, and all of the above. And the answer is all of the above. As you'll see in a picture there. And I typically like to point this out that it was the effort and the action of students that were at the forefront of this amendment to lower the voting age to 18. Kids the same age as the kids I'm presenting to, showcasing that they have power to make change if they stick with the system. And it really resonates with them. They're like, wow, I could have been me out there if I was born in the 1970s. And it really is true. It really is true how people have more power than I think they give themselves credit for. And nowadays we're very privileged to live with more freedoms than I think they had in the past, but we have to make their fights worth it. We have to go out and we have to vote and make sure their efforts weren't in vain. And so we'll see that now with the timeline, with the 18th Amendment, or the 26th Amendment, sorry, lowering the voting age to 18. And 1984, that deals with the elderly and handicapped. So trying to make polling places more accessible. So over time, voting laws have been a pretty hot button topic. More than 530 laws actually passed since 2013 affecting access to voting. And if you'll have a look at that, it looks like it's leaning on more stringent than accessible, showcasing that, hey, the fight to protect the right to vote is on now more than ever. And so we got to stay vigilant in our efforts, and we encourage our students we're presenting to make the fight worth it. Colorado, however, we're fortunate to live in one of the nation's most accessible states. We're privileged with flexible voter ID and universal mail voting, as well as several polling or in-person polling places. We have a very modernized system with same-day registration, voting centers, and risk-limiting audits. And we stay vigilant. We continue to innovate and are looking to, or are considering policies like ranked choice voting, as well as tribal automatic registration. So I think Skylar's now going to take this how do you vote part.
Yes, thank you, Jackson. Again, my name is Skylar Gold. I'm a senior at Thomas Jefferson High School. I have never gotten to give this to students, but I'm very happy to be here with you guys. So let's start off with how do you vote? The purpose of this slide is to introduce this section that includes voting in Colorado, election types, registration, planning, voting, and ballot security. Just basically an overall view of how do you actually vote. Okay, next slide. So we like to start off with the true or false. You must be 18 years or older to register to vote in Colorado. Obviously, that is false. As Jackson has stated, we live in an amazing state that allows U.S. citizens in Colorado to pre-register to vote at the age of 15, or which was previously 16, at the DMV, which is great. It allows them easier accessibility to registration. Who can vote in Colorado? So as you all know, you must be a U.S. citizen to vote. This has been a federal law since 1868. Pre-registration, as I just stated, starts at 15 years of age. And anyone who has lived in the state for 22 days or more before an election can vote in that election. If you are currently not serving a sentence for a felony conviction, you can also be eligible to register to vote. This is a great slide just to give them an overview of who can vote and what are the requirements to be a voter. Another true or false, you must complete all items, both candidates and issues, on a ballot for it to be counted. This is also false. You can vote for as little as one issue. In fact, if you submit a blank ballot with a valid signature, it will count as a vote. So, which elections most impact your life? So, local elections have the most immediate effect on your life, followed by state and national elections. This is a great point to point out to students because I think a lot of them only view national elections because that's what we see in the news. We see the presidents. But state actually has the biggest impact immediately. like how tax dollars are raised and spent and how school systems function, are immediate. But that does not mean you shouldn't vote in every type of election. It's just they're all important. They just have a different impact of immediacy. Going along with that, all voting influences your daily life. A great example of this is minimum hourly wages. The federal minimum wage was set in 2007 at $7.25 and remains that today. But through voter-initiated petitions passed in 2016, that changed the state minimum wage to its current $14.81 and is updated annually based on Consumer Price Index for the Denver, Boulder, and Greeley area. This also shows students that their votes impact directly to them, especially money is a big one that has a direct impact on their lives and their future. So it helps them connect to the issues a little bit more. State legislature action in 2019 allowed municipalities to set their own minimum wage, resulting in Denver's current $18.81 and rising to $19.20 this year. And is updated annually based on Consumer Price Index, which is amazing, especially if you live in Denver, you get a pretty good amount. This brings us to what you can do today. This is great to show students how they can be an active participant in their voting cycle. Firstly, you should make a plan to vote, including researching the candidates and issues before you vote. And remember, you do not have to vote on every issue for your ballot to count. So if something isn't as important to you, it's okay to leave it blank. Just vote for the things that you think will affect you and the people around you. Your ballot must be received by the election division by 7 p.m. on election day. And registering is easy. You can go to govotecolorado.gov is one-stop shop to check your registration, to check or register to vote. For students, this is a great slide for them to take a picture of it and check their status. If they're pre-registered and under 18, they will not show up on this site though. This is a great this is a great way to be a voting advocate. By passing these out, you can share these to family and friends and anyone who has questions about registering to vote. Okay, now it is important to be a voter, but it is also important to be an informed voter. Knowing what you are voting for is super important. So you can go to ballotpedia.org and vote411.org are great sites. Sorry, I think we're on the wrong slide. There we go. The Colorado also produces the Blue Book for state issues and White Book for Denver local issues, which are great sources of information as well. And of course, the League of Women Voters of Denver, as you all know, provide great helpful guides for both general as well as position explanations for those issues they take position on. Of course, the League of Women Voters do not ever take positions on candidates, though. Now it's time to make a plan and vote. First, you want to make sure and verify your registration and that it's current and there haven't been any address or name changes. You can go to govotecolorado.gov to check that. Again, you want to make sure you're caught up on researching the candidates and issues. Fill out your ballot, sign your envelope, and deliver your ballot by 7 p.m. This is a great way to just make sure they understand all the steps and in an easy, concise way, and make sure that they're all caught up with the registration, especially if they registered at 15. A lot can change from that to 18, especially addresses with going to college and going out of state. We will skip this Kahoot just for the sake of time. So sorry. Okay, ballot processing. The diagram represents the life cycle of a ballot from initial ballot content certification to audited results reporting. Each step is checked by bipartisan teams. And once a ballot is processed, no one can see any voter's individual results. And your voter record will be marked as voted in that election, and no additional ballots will be accepted. I think ballot processing is a great thing to add to this presentation, because I don't think a lot of students understand that. And I think it adds to voter security and making them understand that our government has checks in place to make sure that their vote is being counted fully. This is just another slide for voter resources to make sure that they have everything they need to be able to vote and have the knowledge. We like to give this to everyone so that they just have access to everything that we have and that they can understand. So I'm going to hand it over to Sam so we can practice what we have learned.
Well, you just did practice what you learned, Jackson and Skylar. That was a test you both passed. So I just wanted to point out before I move on with mock elections, this is what the program's about. These guys are out there presenting it, not me, not Lisa. Well, that's not true. Lisa and I have presented it as well. But the idea is that these youth ambassadors are doing this in every high school. So as we get a new high school on board, I think there was a question about this, we get a sponsor. It may be the deputy registrar in the case of Denver Public Schools, but it's usually that usually coincides with, or we grab in addition to that, a civics or history teacher. Jackson's part of, Jackson, help me, is it social studies honors or history honors? I always mess it up.
AP government.
AP government honors. Okay. So we approached his teacher, Mr. Dineza, and he's our sponsor there. So, but just to be clear, and you saw a picture of Skylar in the very beginning. Skylar is responsible for TJ. So she arranges, okay, with the school, we're going to do a registration on this date. She works with her sponsor, Mr. Baring. But she's responsible. All we do is come in and support her and support Mr. Baring in those elections. So we usually have two. Jackson's partner is Stella over at Mullen. So the two U.S. ambassadors are responsible for that school and responsible for leading this. And we'll get to this at the end, but as we get civic groups and opportunities like this, we then give our youth ambassadors the opportunity to present this material to people like you, or our civics groups, or other kids. And as you can heard from both their presentations, but specifically Jackson's examples, these are people presenting to their peers. This is why you should vote. So far, I think you can see from Jackson and Skylar, incredibly successful with our two pilot schools, and they represent our two pilot schools. So we're hoping to replicate that and find more Jacksons, more Skylars out there in every school. But when we tell a school, bring a school on board, we need a sponsor, and then we need to use volunteers. There are exceptions. Colorado Excel Academy is adult only. We're not getting volunteers, but we are working with the history teacher there to present this to the adults. So every rule, of course, has an exception, but that's our general model. We had two programs. The educating program, Piri is on the phone, that we reworked a little bit. And then we had another program out of Oregon called the mock election. In Oregon, they run, not with the schools, just independently, a mock election. They create a ballot, put one ballot out, then they collect the information back. We weren't comfortable collecting the information back. So what we did was we created, as part of this program, the ability to do a mock election. We create, that is the league, creates a practice ballot. And if I showed you the full ballot, I don't think I have a full one here. If I show you a full ballot, it's made to look pretty much like, but just enough different so that we're not in trouble with Denver elections. And we did show this to Denver elections before we produced it, just in case that question comes up. And we produce it with a set of issues. Our feedback. This is run with all of those sponsors are now advisors to us on what they want in the presentation, what they don't. The mock ballot itself was issues only. They did not want candidates, which fits with our mission very well. Candidates tend to be a little dicey for their classroom, so they wanted to keep it just on issues. The ones that were chosen last time, as Jackson said, flavored tobacco. What was the second one? I'm trying to remember the second one, Jackson. And the third one was the bond issue, one of the 5 bond issues in Denver. Oh, the second was a Colorado State one.
School lunches.
For school lunch. Yeah, was it LL or MM, Lisa?
Don't remember.
Yeah, it was LL or MM. It was school lunch, because a lot of the schools we went into, parents didn't know school lunch was on the ballot. And I think a lot of them turned out, or at least we think so, because of this. What the ballot showed them was what we learned, I guess, our experience, just Lisa and myself who've done it twice, was they never see the ballot before. They didn't know how to fill it out. We did it on a two-sided piece of paper, just like Denver elections. So some of them missed the backside, just like in Denver elections. When they read it, Mr. Dineza, the sponsor for Mullen, had said, I want one of these complex bond issues on here, because he wanted them to see how much text they had to get through and how to understand it. So in that, when we've done it before, we even said, what did you, like the flavored tobacco, that was our favorite one. We said, what do you think you voted for? And we would ask them, and they, about, I don't know, Lisa, about a third would have voted differently if they understood what it was asking them. So then they discussed it among themselves. So it's teaching them not only what the ballot is, how to vote, but also how to read a ballot and how to get through it. What is the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights that are going to show up on every ballot? What does that mean when they say that? Why is this language that how it is? Things of that nature. So in general, by the way, from the last Denver election, generally all the classes have voted in the majority the same as the actual ballot came out, just in case you're wondering. But we don't collect that data. We collect no student data, no actual result data. Instead, we let the teachers do that how they went. And I want to ask Jackson to jump in, because he conducted the mock election. Not only did he present to 205 students, they did a mock election with 205 students. So how did that go, Jackson? What were some of the lessons learned, and what you would like to tell these folks about what we do with that ballot?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So for me, in my experience, 200 people across one school day, it was a little chaotic at first, but eventually, by the third or fourth period, we were able to get things pretty smoothed out, pretty refined. And in terms of my experience, it was actually pretty similar to a lot of what you're saying. Sometimes people having a difficult time understanding what the ballot exactly is saying, what a yes vote means versus a no vote. What we ended up doing actually is we had the teacher pull up like Ballotpedia and like have it on the board as a guide so that students were able to read that in addition to what the ballot was saying. So it was already like they were putting what we were talking about in the presentation into practice, which was pretty cool to see. But I say for the most part, it was pretty informative for a lot of people, and it was an enjoyable experience, informative and enjoyable. So.
And now our ask. How can you help? Lisa, did you want to start us off with this?
Sure. Yeah, this will be pretty short. As Sam emphasized, our goal is to get contacts at school, either through a deputy registrar, and that's the position that each high school should have, a person who facilitates voter registration at their school, and or civics or social studies teachers. So one way you can help is, do you have contacts at local high schools who, fit that role? And it may not be someone who is a civics or social studies teacher, but maybe it's a teacher at the school who teaches English and can get us in touch with a civics or social studies teacher. Um, Likewise, besides the school environment, there are community groups that are more focused around youth. If you happen to participate with a community youth group somehow or have a contact there, like Boys and Girls Club or perhaps a church youth group or something like that, we would love to have those contacts to reach out to them. And the last way I can think of is if you're interested in getting involved and actually helping present when there isn't a student to present or a teacher would rather have a league person present, be sure to let Sam or me know. Sam, can you think of other ways?
No, that's it. We just want your contacts. And you saw Skylar and Jackson present. These guys like to do this. So we need more civics groups for them to go out on Saturdays. There was a question about when we do it was asked in the questions, I think, Perlan. So I'll answer that now. It's generally during school hours when it's a high school. So that's why civic groups and other opportunities are great, because our youth ambassadors would like more experience presenting it, and they're usually not available to go to another school during school hours. It's this whole class thing that they insist on. So if you know civic groups that work with youth, and the ones we're looking for are not ones where, oh, we go into schools and we work with these youth. It's more, we bring youth together on a Saturday for an event, or on a once a month event, or something of that nature. Because then we have them asked to do this, and this is year round. We can do this at any time, because unlike just the election cycle we deal with in voter services, people turn 18 all the time, every day, just about. So we're constantly in a cycle of informing the teachers and doing voter registration for youth just about year round. The summer's a little slow, but the rest is pretty much year round. And with that, Perlene, I'll turn it over to you to moderate the discussion.
Sure. There were a few questions that were put in chat. Please continue to put them there, and we'll also ask if you want to unmute in a bit. There were a couple more questions about the program itself. Do you also show them mock envelopes that help them see where they need to sign? So the next step after they fill out the ballot?
We do not. It's a good suggestion. Maybe we should just add it at the bottom of the mock ballot. But no, the teachers collect them. Some teachers discussed even putting up little pieces, as Jackson said. They put up Ballotpedia. Mr. Dinesh also discussed potentially in future years having debates about the issues, things of that nature. So they do expand, but not the signature part. And I also should mention that we come up with, from a couple of civic teachers advisors, we put issues on the ballots, one front and back side. We don't want to go much further than that. But then we present that material out to their own secure directory for each high school. So Jackson, for example, shortened the presentation that he gave. He took a lot of the slides out. And so each school has their own secure where they can change or request other examples or other issues on the ballot, and we're happy to customize it. And if we do have any friends from other leagues, I think we do. I think maybe Barbara. We'd love to expand into other leagues, and our thoughts right now, but we'd work with you however you want, is to provide your own folder. We'll give you the master deck and the master, and then, for example, if it was DougCo or Rappo or whatever, you can slide. We can either do it for you or help you put your issues in there, and it'll be your own folder, and you take and run with it. Or we can help you as well with volunteers. Next question.
Skylar and Jackson seem to love it, but there was a question about, are there any incentives student volunteers receive for presenting, for example, a certificate or simple line to add to their resume or college applications?
Skylar, Jackson, it's on both your LinkedIn now, right?
I did add it to my college applications. So I did put that I was a youth ambassador and kind of what I did with this process. So I think that's a great thing. College is always an incentive, especially for juniors.
Yeah, I can say that I'll be adding membership of the youth council to my application as well.
And we don't pay people on the youth council, but we did the past few years, we've given out gift cards to the youth council members who are active. And yes, we're more than welcome to, we're more than happy to write letters of recommendation, or we have a youth council member right now who's looking to do a shadow opportunity. And so she's going to go down to the state capitol with Andrea Wilkins of the Legislative Action Committee in a couple of weeks. And I'm trying to organize a special voter registration event for her too. So if there's a student that needs something particular for their schooling or, an application of some sort, we try to work with them and meet their needs.
Yeah, and I think from Lisa's answer, you can tell we're flexible on that. If there's something they need, we'll try to, if it's within us, like volunteer hours, etc., we'll helpfully sign off on that and help them.
We have one, Sheila Carr, who works as an election judge, said you students might want to know that you can work for pay at polling places, even if you're not old enough to vote. My son did that in high school, and he loved it. It was pretty fun. There was also a comment that there's supposed to be a proposed bill to simplify the ballot language in Colorado, which would also be excellent since they are so confusing. So a couple questions on voting itself. If voters move, do they have to change their registration prior to voting?
Yes, because in Colorado, that's how a person gets their ballot, is at their address, and ballots aren't forwarded. So even if you have forwarding in place because you moved 3 months ago, a ballot won't be forwarded. So it would be important to register at that new address. And in Colorado, since you can register and vote up until 7 p.m. on election day, try to make that pretty easy for people. If they realize, oh, I haven't gotten my ballot, they can go to a voter service and polling center and present their ID. And then the ballot is held provisionally. It's not counted until the clerk's office actually verifies that that ballot can be counted.
So another question about voting itself. In Colorado, can students register and vote when they go to college?
Yes, but that it's a weird question the way it was asked. If they register in the state that they're going to college, then and it's not in this state, they're no longer Colorado voters. But there is a line on every registration form, or you can update your registration form to have your ballot mailed somewhere, including out of state. Denver Elections mails a lot of them out of state. So you can receive your ballot out of state directly from Denver Elections and mail it back. So yes is the answer, I think, depending on what the question was.
And also, students have to be careful if they have a scholarship. Like one of our kids had a scholarship to attend a university in Kansas, and she got a scholarship that was specifically for out-of-state students. So if she had registered to vote in Kansas, that would have voided her scholarship that she was due based on that she was from out of state. So we advise with college students, if they're unsure, to be sure to check with, if they're getting a scholarship, who is providing their scholarship. But we want to make sure everybody votes. So when we meet with college kids, we always say, be sure that you vote somewhere.
Yeah, we get a lot of, and I think there was another question, this again for
Right.
we get a lot of kids who come and say, oh, can I register? And we encourage them, especially if their residential address is wherever, Chicago, wherever it might be, to go ahead and request an absentee ballot via that state. It just happens we're an all-mail state, so it's a little easier, but go through that process unless they want to change the registration. And we do college campuses. There's a lot more of questions around that, and we do a few.
It sounds like the other question was saying if students here in college and they want to vote in Colorado, can they register their address here?
Sure, as long as they give up their registration in their other state.
In the other state, right?
I'm expecting Gabriella to jump in at any second if we make a mistake here, Mariam.
It should be great. We're sure to unmute Gabriella if you want to. There was somebody that was asking who they should send contacts, and Sue put in the League of Women Voters address and telephone number. But Lisa, I don't know if you wanted to put your contact information.
Yeah, I'll put my address in.
Yeah, we can put mine and Lisa's in as well more directly, but either way, we'll get it. And please bring us the contacts. We really need them.
So would anybody like to unmute and ask questions or comment?
I just wanted to acknowledge that Gabriella is on the call, and Gabriella is our partner. at
Hi.
Denver elections.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm having unmuting complications here. Can
Oh,
everyone hear
sorry,
me
we can
all
hear
right?
you.
Okay, good. Hi, good evening. I just want to commend the two students for their presentation this evening. That was fantastic. And I put that comment in here about, the incentives that students might be able to receive as we're recruiting them to present, at least in Denver Public Schools. Just because I want to honor, of course, this type of activism. It's in the spirit of volunteering and strengthening democracy because it improves all of our lives. But it's always great when we can sell this opportunity to students and make sure that we highlight the benefits that is in it for them, right? Like I heard great public speaking from both Skylar and I'm sorry, I can't, Jackson. You guys did fantastic. And so something like this can really help a student in high school as they're working on their public speaking skills, they're working on their researching skills. So this was great. I'm very impressed and really excited to partner. Lisa and I have been in conversations about how we're gonna push this opportunity in Denver Public Schools, and I have counterparts in other counties, in Jefferson County, Adams County, all the surrounding counties, and we've been working on creating statewide materials to help increase teachers' capacities in doing voter registration drives and just educating teachers on how to do voter registration. And so I'm really excited to pair what I've been working on with with the youth engagement programming, because I think it complements it very well. So this has been very energizing and I'm excited.
Yeah, I want to second that. Jackson and Skylar, you both did a really superb job of presenting, and I love your enthusiasm. It just comes across. It's not just what you say, but the way you bring it to everybody. You really show it that you believe being an active citizen and voter matters. Thank you so much.
I'd like to just mention that I did put in the chat the telephone number at the League of Women Voters of Denver's office, as well as our email address. So if any of you want to get more information about the program, um, you can call that number or send an email, and that will get to Sam and Lisa.
I'm wondering if people have suggestions for ways that we can improve if you felt like we left something out or spent too much time on a particular topic or
I think one of the things to talk about is that about where the drop boxes are. All of those drop boxes are listed in the blue book every time. And it also says on the envelope that you need to put postage on the envelope. But clearly, if you just go to one of the drop boxes and put your be sure to sign the envelope on the outside and date it, into a drop box, you don't need to use any postage.
Kay, I think that
Thank
was
you.
one of your suggestions too, wasn't it, Kay?
Yes, and I just wanted to emphasize though the part about sometimes people aren't sure what they put in the envelope, and that's another thing. Because I've even, you're supposed to tear off the top. There's one little part you tear off, and people often don't understand that in a regular ballot, and there's just I think things like that because then people go, well, I don't know, so maybe I just won't do it. So I think the more we can help them figure out, what goes in there.
Great.
Two of the pieces of information that I've been working on, and I'd be curious to hear Skylar and Jackson's experience with working with their peers on this, is the importance of having a unique signature. And when you register to vote, there's a lot of students nowadays who don't know how to write in cursive. So like, are students developing a unique signature, when you're 15 and you're registering to vote for the first time? understanding that signature verification, that's how your ballot is going to be certified. And then the other piece I'll mention is I really appreciate the slide about the different types of elections that there are and how the local elections really matter, but maybe elaborating a little bit more on the definitions of the different types of elections, because I know a lot of first-time voters or people who have not voted a lot in their lives aren't aware that there are more elections outside than presidential and state elections. They don't realize school board elections. What is that? What is a coordinated election? So even just a slide with a few quick definitions, that's also something I'm developing. I'm developing a one-pager on that. So I'd also be happy to just share those when they're ready and they can get thrown into the slides here too.
Gabriella, that'd be fantastic. As you can see, we stole the life of a ballot slide from you.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that too. I actually haven't seen it, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe we should update it too.
Take it. And is it possible that, to Kay's point, can we get some sample envelopes from you that are not valid?
Yeah, let me check on that, Sam. I can follow up with you.
Yeah, no worries.
Because I don't know how it works with our operations division. I don't know the technicality of using envelopes, but yeah, we can definitely touch base on that.
Perfect. So, Kay, we'll try that. We're really careful not to use actual election materials in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not sure that'll work, but it's
Well, even just showing a picture of it, you know,
okay.
you could show a picture, and I think show both sides of the envelope. Remember, one side you signed, the other side would have the information where it goes.
I love it.
And I think it sounds so, you know, ordinary, but if you're, I have a lot of people in my family who are not used to using mail anymore. And so putting a stamp on something is quite unusual.
Got it. That's a great suggestion. We'll add those.
Same with the signature, Gabriella. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The developing a standard signature is really important, that you use the same signature. A lot of times, when you go someplace and you buy something and it says, it gives you a little box to sign, you just put a squiggly line there. You cannot do that on your ballot. It has to be an actual signature, and the one that you use, that you're going to use on any governmental or I don't know whether you have to sign certain forms when you apply for college now, but that signature should be consistent and standardized.
I'd say anything that you for which you need a legal signature.
Yes.
And that really does need to be standard. You need to help kids understand that at one time I can't use K all the time. Mine is Linda K, and that's what it always is, you know. And that kids need to understand they can't go back and forth from their nickname to their other name, you know.
Well, Jackson and Skylar, do you all have any input on the signature discussion?
I actually have a funny story. When we started presenting this and I had finished my presentation, the teacher of the class I was talking in actually had a funny anecdote about the signature piece you're all talking about now, and how when she started voting, like her signature on her ballot was different than the one she had like inputted. And so a couple days later, she got a knock on her door from like a government official asking her if this was really her that had voted. So that story kind of showed people like, yes, your signature does matter. And I thought, but I think you guys raised a good point about pointing that out, the importance of making sure that the signature they're putting on their ballot matches the one on record. But I just thought that was a funny story that came up.
Jackson and Skylar, I have a funny one because I live in Florida part of the year. And when the year that we had the hanging chads, that's another long story. But anyway, in that year, when we had to go back and recount ballots, every single signature was looked at again and two people had to look at it, and it was one from each party had to look at it. So it isn't like, sometimes people say, well, who's looking at those signatures? How do I know that that's fair? Couldn't it be just because the Democrats in office, they look at all those, or the Republicans in office, they look at all. And I think students need to understand that when there's ever a doubt, two different people both parties look at it.
In Colorado, every step, you show the life of a ballot. At every step that ballot is transported or looked at, it is done by not just bipartisan, but they almost always try to have an independent voter who is an employee of who's a employee of the uh, uh, state or the city, look at that ballot. So every step is bipartisan, and the chain of command is very carefully watched. That's something that has been in the news as being questioned. It is very carefully done in Colorado, and always bipartisan or tripartisan, including an independent voter. If the votes are put in a strong box and collected from a ballot receptacle where you can put your ballots, two people are there from different parties to collect those ballots into that strong box, to lock that strong box, and to carry that strong box back to voter service of Denver. So we're very careful here in Colorado about what happens to your ballots.
And also failing to your signature to match help students understand that's okay because they had the opportunity to correct it. Because I
Yes.
mean, that's another thing. Because I think, you go like, oh, well, I guess I just lost my ballot. No. And if you're on voter track, they'll be able to get in touch with you and everything, and you'll know whether it was accepted.
Yes,
That's another piece.
they will contact you after they look at your signature, and if they have any questions about whether that's a valid signature, you will be given the opportunity to address that and send material. And I think we now have the ability not just to put that in an envelope and mail it to the Secretary of State's office, but also to do it digitally, to use something else that has your signature on it. Another age group that has some difficulties are older adults, because some older adults develop problems like Parkinson's disease, or another cause of tremors, or maybe somebody has broken their right arm that year and they can't hold the pen correctly to sign their ballot. They sign it as best they can, and if the two bipartisan people who are looking at that ballot are concerned about that signature, that person is contacted to correct that ballot and have their ballot counted. It doesn't automatically kick the ballot out.
Rona, you had a question?
Yes, a comment actually. One of the wonderful features of our system here is ballot tracks, one word. And if you sign up for ballot tracks, you only have to do it once. They send you an email saying your vote was received, and then you get another one saying your vote was counted. And I think that is one of the most reassuring things. How many times you vote and say, well, what if my vote got lost? What happens to it? And I have had twice where I didn't get my ballot when all my neighbors did. And I walked over to the Board of Elections with my ID, and they gave me another ballot and voided whatever got lost in the mail. So that's also a convenience and a good control on our voting process here in Colorado.
It was an innovative thing that came in fairly recently. Piri, from Boulder, you wanted to make a comment?
Are you on mute, Perry?
You might need to unmute.
I know Perry was having a problem with her computer the other day.
Oh, she went out. Sorry, she's coming back in. Sorry, I just saw
Okay.
it. She wanted to be readmitted. And then I think it's a school night, so I'm guessing Jackson and Skylar want us to wrap up soonish. Perry, are you back in?
I'd love to hear what Perry has to say since we kind of stole her program.
She looks like she's back in, but maybe she's
She's
having.
muted. She's muted.
Erie, you're still muted.
Well, while we're waiting for Perry, I just wanted to give a big thank you to Jackson and Skylar and Sam. You've all worked really hard on this, and it was a great presentation, so thank you.
And one of the other things that Sam represents is that the League of Women Voters is not for women only. Men can also become members of League of Women Voters.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Yes? Oh,
Mhm.
great. So I'm you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm in a public place and it was very loud. So I just wanted to, of course, thank you in Denver for what you've done, because it's amazing what you've done in such a short time, Sam, and your entire League of Women Voters Denver, because getting into schools is very difficult. And in my experience over 2 years, what I found, because you're also addressing League members who may try to get into schools, and one of the innovative ways I found was to actually look at the clubs that exist in the schools. And if you could either find out who the sponsor is, then the presentation couldn't possibly take place in the clubs, which isn't as stringent as being a part of curriculum. So that was one thing that I wanted to mention, as well as just how impressed I am that you already have these student ambassadors and how much you've achieved in the last 2 years.
We're pretty
Thank you,
proud of
Perry.
Lisa and Mariam too.
Well, we built on what you did, Perry, so thank you so much.
I'll probably write an email about a few things that I think might be considered, but I really admire that you've had the faculty of these schools get involved and the students in doing the revisions, because that's the audience, and so you have to adapt to the audience that you have. So looks like you've done a great job doing that.
Well, I think
I'll
that's
sign
probably
off.
it. Do you think so, Perlin?
I do. I don't see any more
Okay.
questions.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. We hope we can see you again in March at the Montu Presbyterian Church for our next briefing on domestic violence. Bye.
Bye.